Okay, so today we're doing section 4, unit 4, learning set 6, polynomial and rational inequalities. So our objectives are to solve polynomial inequalities algebraically and graphically, and to solve rational inequalities algebraically and graphically. And they're both very similar in how they're solved. So we're going to start off with using a graph to solve a polynomial inequality. And basically, the inequality is where the function is f of x is either greater than 0 or less than 0 in this case. So if f of x is greater than 0 is true when f of x is positive. So that means we're looking at where is it above the x-axis. So if we look at our graph over here on the right, our function is above the 0 when it's above the axis. And that is not very big. That's a little too big, but it'll do. So these spots right here where I highlighted in green, that's where f of x is greater than 0. So for the intervals, starting at the left, it would start at negative infinity, and then it would go until it reaches 1 to negative 3. And I'm going to use a parentheses because in this case it's greater than. There's no equal to, so I don't include it in the solution. And then you use the little or symbol. I don't know if you remember it. Or the other part of the interval would be from negative 1 to 0. And once again, because it's not equal to, it's not included, so it would be negative 1 comma 0. And then we got one more section, so we do another or symbol, that it is in the positive direction. And that starts at 1 and it keeps going to infinity. Okay, did that make sense? So when we're looking at the next one for where f of x is less than 0, we're looking for where is it below the x-axis. So that would be the pink area. So this time we only have 2 intervals. So if we look at it, it starts at negative 3. And once again, there's no equal sign, so that means we're using parentheses, and it goes from negative 3 to negative 1, or the next interval would be from 0 to 1. So now we're going to look at how you solve it algebraically, and there are basically 5 steps that you would take. 1, you want to move all terms to one side of the inequality so that 0 is on the other side. The second step is you want to completely factor the polynomial and find the zeros. Third step is plot the zeros on a number line. Fourth step, choose test points in each interval, and then you substitute the test points into your function to determine whether the interval is positive or negative. And then the fifth step is write the solution using interval notation, and you use parentheses or brackets where necessary. So an example using those steps would be solve the inequality. And we said the first thing we want to do is we want to get the inequality, get everything on one side and 0 on the other. So in this case, we want to move the 4x over. So we'll make it 3x cubed minus 11x squared minus 4x is less than 0. And then our second step was to find the zeros. So what we want to do is, first off, I see everything has an x in it, so I'm going to pull an x out, and I get left with 3x squared minus 11x minus 4 is less than 0. And then now I can find the factors. So 3x and x, well, to get 11, I would want to multiply the 3 and the 4. And the 11 needs to be negative, so that means that needs to be negative, and this should be a positive 1. So that means that my zeros are going to be 0, negative 1/3, and 4. Okay, so for the number line, these zeros are what I want to focus on. So I'm going to draw my number line. I know I have 0 in the middle. I have negative 1/3, and I have 4. So in this case, I have 3 points where it crosses the x-axis. So I want to check all 4 of these to see if the answers are true. So for this section, I'm going to test negative 1. Okay, so this is the fourth step where we test the numbers. So I'm going to test negative 1. I'm going to take negative 1 and I'm going to put it into my function over here. So it's going to be 3 times negative 1 cubed minus 11 times negative 1 squared minus 4 times negative 1, and I want to know if that answer is less than 0. So when I solve it, I end up with negative 10. Is negative 10 less than 0? It is. So that means this is part of the solution for the interval. And then I want to go to the next section, and I want to pick a number in between negative 1 and 0. So I'm going to use 0.25 because I know that's 1/4, which is less than 1/3. So I'm going to take that and I'm going to test that section now. I'm going to test negative 0.25. Negative 0.25, plug it into the equation, squared minus 4 times negative 0.25. Is it less than 0? And when I get to my answer, I end up with 17/64, or in decimal, it's a positive number. Is that less than 0? No. So this section is not included as a solution in the interval. Okay, so for this one, I'm going to just use 1 because 1's a nice, easy number to use. And when I plug it in, 1 would be 3 times 1 cubed minus 11 times 1 squared minus 4 times 1. So that would be 3 minus 11 is negative 8, and a negative 4 is a negative 12. Is that less than 0? Yes, it is less than 0. And then for the last one, I'm just going to use 5. 5 is the number I'm going to use for the last one. So if I plug 5 in, 3 times 5 cubed minus 11 times 5 squared minus 4 times 5. Is it less than 0? Well, my answer is 80. Is 80 less than 0? No. No, it's not. So that means my intervals that I'm going to use for my solution are going to be the intervals where I have my check marks. Okay, those are going to be my 2 intervals. So when I write it out, and I'm going to put that over here so y'all can see that. So my solution is going to be from, because it starts at negative infinity, it's going to go from negative infinity until negative 1/3, or it's going to go from 0 to 4. Okay, so that would be my solution. And once again, because there's no equal sign under there, that means I'm using the parentheses and not the brackets.